Hello, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology. And yesterday's recording didn't quite go well as planned, um, mainly because the screen started conking out about towards the end. So I think I have some connectivity problems. Hopefully, I'm recording earlier in the day without Rahu in the first house, and that should alleviate any problems with recording consistency. I apologize, and I'll try to recap as much of yesterday as I can. All right, so the first thing I forgot to mention yesterday was if you want to contact me for readings or lessons, it's best to text me at 508 525 0001. So that's my phone number. That's also my texting number. You can also contact me at Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. And we should be all set to go with that. Again, so that's Gary Gomes G at Gmail. Oh boy, this is really not translating well. GaryGomes, then the letter G at gmail.com. Okay, so excuse me, I'm having some trouble clearing my voice this morning. And let's get this show on the road. I do have some upcoming co-presentations with fellow astrologers like Ellen and I, and Gary O'Toole, Jean Karazian, and my really good friend, Lolita Donatello Rybak. So I think we are expecting to see some more sharing of astrological knowledge and also some remedial measures you can apply to help your chart. I'm sorry for the glare on my glasses. I'm noticing that right now. So let's get on with what's happening around the world. Now, one thing I did notice a few weeks ago was some action around Ireland. And I was actually scratching my head and saying, what could be happening in Ireland right now? And lo and behold, last week we had the riots in Ireland. We've been having some street activity in England. A lot of this has to do with either, and as a matter of fact, you saw some mass protests over the past few weeks in the United States. And some of these were connected with the Israel Hamas conflict. The ones in Ireland were actually connected with an ongoing immigration crisis in Europe. So Europe's being hit with a lot of refugees, the same as the United States is. And certain countries like Ireland have not had, their population base is much smaller than the United States is. They're not quite as used to a large number of immigrants. And this was somebody who had been in the country apparently for 20 years, but had either injured or killed a boy. The details I'm not clear on. So, and as a matter of fact, was brought to justice by a Brazilian, a shop owner who come from Brazil, from what I understand. So I think one of the things that happens is when you introduce a large new population into an area that hasn't had a population for a while, or a new population influxes for a while, that's there'll be tensions. Okay, I mean sort of that sort of goes with the territory. The other thing is these countries like the United States, UK, France, Germany, were colonial powers, so they essentially assisted in the destabilization of a lot of the countries that are involved. Ireland really had, other than belonging to the European Union, Ireland had no real part in that. So I think there are deeper issues that are hitting here than just hate speech or racism. That's just my personal opinion. The other thing is, if you have, so I don't want to be flagged, I don't want to be, is that, as I said in an interview to Gary O'Toole many years ago, you're going to see increased censorship of media, and Ireland has recently passed some laws regulating speech. Canada has taken measures to quell protest, economic measures. And again, keep something in mind. I'm not necessarily saying that some of these measures aren't understandable. They certainly are. I think it just starts us on a slippery slope. And it just starts us on a journey towards doing something for the greater good that may have longer term ramifications for our daily lives. So I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Hot Fuzz, but it's a really funny movie. I think it's a really funny movie, and it's about about a community that essentially starts, in order to win the best Village of the Year award, they start killing off people who start investigating or who threaten to upset the lifestyle. And it's done like a comedy. It's a Simon Pegg movie. And I thought it was fascinating because the word, the comment I kept hearing out of the member of the Irish Parliament was "for the greater good." So again, different contexts. One's a work of fiction, one's a work of reality. But again, when we start to entertain these notions, we should exercise great care that we're not hurting the people or infringing on the rights of people who, even though they say things we don't like, still have a right to say them. Okay, so it's just my personal belief system. I'm not asking you to ascribe to it. I'm not asking you to engage in subversive activities or to oppose the state or anything like that. I'm just saying there is an inherent danger in it, and that is, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line between hate speech and out censorship? So that's a concern of mine. It's been a concern of mine ever since I've been a kid. So it's and I'm 71 now. So it's always because the speech that was suppressed when I was young were things like the autobiography of Malcolm X, and other books which were left-wing books. So it cuts both ways. And you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware of the consequences. Now, again, the social media environment is a much larger and much more immediately influenceable segment of the population than a book is, because you have to consciously go out and find a book and read it. So there is a difference. But I do worry about how much we will give up in the interest of security and safety. All right, so that's the end of that editorial. So let's go on to astrologically. So why am I talking this way? Well, let's look at the chart. So that's a kind of a messy segue, but so this is the chart for today. At least I hope it's the chart for today. All right. So I'm going to do it 3 times just to be on the safe side. And stop share. And one more time for luck. One more time for Jupiter. All right. So, and I just realized how many times I've said gonna in this commercial. So I'm going to start stop contracting my words. All right. So we have Mercury in the first house. Okay, so why is there so much destruction, chaos, unrest, war in the world right now? Well, we can look at a couple of factors. First of all, when I was talking yesterday, Moon was in a Shlesha nakshatra. It's right at the end of Cancer. It's right at the end of a Shlesha nakshatra, which is a very difficult nakshatra. It actually creates problems. It's really not afraid to lie. I have a cat crying at my door. To lie, to get what it wants. Now, the second pada, which is where I was yesterday, is actually considered to be the most difficult part of the nakshatra. But it's a self-promotion nakshatra. That's really what it excels at. So you saw a lot of a Shlesha-like activity in the debate between Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom earlier this week. So that was essentially a self-promotion nakshatra. Excuse me. Newsom is not running, but I don't think anybody's laboring under the impression that if Biden opts not to run, then Newsom will throw his hat in the ring. And so again, I won't talk that much about politics today, but let's look at where Mercury is. Mercury's in, so this is about communication. So essentially, if Mercury's, let me just move this away. All right, so if Mercury's in this particular nakshatra, which is Mula nakshatra, it's a destructive nakshatra. It's connected with breaking down and rebuilding. And as a matter of fact, using communications for violence, because Mercury is the planet primarily connected with communications and media. Is in a nakshatra which is ruled by Ketu. Let's see where Ketu is. Ketu's in Chitra, which is a very warlike or a very Mars-based nakshatra. It's about building up and tearing down things. So, and Ketu and Venus, which is allegedly a planet of peace, it's not really, but let's give it that kind of a status for the time being, is also in Chitra nakshatra. So even though Venus and Ketu have passed each other in the stars, which should give a lot of people relief, it's still influenced by Ketu because they're both in the same nakshatra. That'll last for another couple of weeks. Then Venus will go into Swati, which is about another week. Then Venus will move into Swati, which is kind of a scattering nakshatra. So, and Mars is in a nakshatra ruled by, so Mars, the planets responsible for war are mainly Mars, Jupiter to a surprising extent. And because it's about fighting the good cause, and Ketu because it's about destruction. Rahu is about greed. So Rahu is in Revati nakshatra, so it refers back to Mercury. So we have a lot of dissatisfaction from this nakshatra. Chitra refers back to Mars. Venus refers back to Mars. Ashvini is ruled by the moon, which refers back to, Ashvini is, again, Ketu, and moon is in a Mercury nakshatra. So all these planets, Saturn is, where Saturn's in Sadabhishak, which is a Rahu nakshatra. So pretty much all the lords or the starting points of these nakshatras are in Venus, the rising sign is Venus, Mercury, Saturn, Ketu, Mars, Rahu, Mercury, Mars. So all these nakshatras are linked at the lunar mansion level, which is a significant part of Vedic astrology. Okay, so there are 27 lunar mansions. As these lunar mansions run through, it'll make people more quickly to fight, more quickly to take offense, more quickly to punish, more quick to punish. And I think whenever you get combinations like this, I want to draw one more Lagna or Lagna. And that's the purpose of the chart. Hold on a second. Karakamsha, I want to look at it. Hindu Lagna. So the Hindu Lagna is connected with Venus. So it's largely a concept connected with fairness, but fighting for fairness. So essentially the Hindu Lagna is the purpose of the chart. The purpose is to find peace, but through effort and through fight and through conflict. Hopefully through logic, but we can't guarantee that. Okay. So let's go back to the regular chart. All right, I'm going to go back to the layout examples. All right, so a lot of what's going on, there was a ceasefire in Israel that got clipped. Ukraine, the fighting has largely ended, I think. That's really one of the reasons you're seeing gasoline prices go down. And Jupiter is aspecting Venus, so that'll make us feel more optimistic, maybe overly optimistic. Saturn, again, is dominating this horoscope, so it's sort of like encouraging a slowdown, but at least for this month, the Jupiter-Venus combination will make us a little bit super optimistic. The choice between doing tradition and justice, so that's really the idea of why you're seeing groups that were political allies at one point fighting against each other. And this is particularly true in the Israeli-Hamas conflict. And that's a complicated issue. And again, like I said, I'm not really prepared to go there. Jupiter's in the fifth house. There is this stubbornness in the chart because Saturn's aspecting Jupiter, where we don't want to change the way we've been doing things very much, and that becomes a bit of a problem for us, both as a country and as a world. And I think you'll see some changes really in 2000 in between April of 2024 to May of 2025, because there'll be a lot more focus on financial security, stability, and I would say internal politics. Rahu and Ketu will change things. Okay, this transit of Rahu and Ketu will change ideological bases, it'll change affiliations, it'll change partnerships. So there'll be less reliance or less faith in governments staying as they are, less faith in belief systems, and less faith and more desire to be critical of people who espouse certain belief systems. Okay. And Saturn is in the third house, gives a lot of courage, but like I said, also a lot of stubbornness. And I think one of the things over here is Saturn on top of Jupiter makes the criminal justice system in most countries, or governments in most countries, very punitive. So they'll be quick to pass a law or quick to prosecute regardless of what the offense is. Okay, so we're seeing that play out in both the Trump trials and also the Biden impeachment inquiries in the United States. We're also seeing a lot less patience around the world with political leadership. So it's going to be kind of a dodgy period between now and May in terms of figuring out which direction these particular trials are going to go in, or are going to follow. And I'm not trying to hedge. I'm just saying that if I'm unclear about something, I'll let you know about it. And I also think there has been a lot of effort to legislate and litigate power. So I think that's something that we should be aware of, and that's the Saturn aspecting Jupiter. Venus has a problem with that. Saturn's aspecting Mars. So again, like I said, there's a lot less. So Saturn aspecting the Sun tends to make the government and the military very controlling, very aggressive. And we'll see that across the world in a variety of countries. Rahu in the fourth house, again, destabilization of governments. Ketu in the 10th house, governments really don't know how to lead. And that's not a blanket condemnation of governments. It's just that that's what the perception is. Okay. There is a desire for peace, equity, understanding, prosperity across the world. It's just not being delivered right now. Okay. Hopefully that'll shift in a few months, and hopefully we'll see Saturn start to introduce some more creative innovations. And probably the most dangerous time over the next few months. I'm going to do a year broadcast in a few weeks. I think probably the most dangerous thing is the Mars-Saturn mutual aspect, because basically we're expecting things to be perfect. The problem with that is one person's idea of perfection is not another person's idea of perfection. And again, this Jupiter-Venus combination is always challenging. not because they're bad planets, but because there's a striving for a good that not only fits our societal norms, but also is fair to everyone. Okay. So it's really kind of interesting when you see these planets in opposition, because you look at that in a chart and you say, Venus and Jupiter, how can that be bad? Well, Venus is neutral to Jupiter, but Jupiter really doesn't like Venus, because Venus will sometimes say, you know what, we really don't care what the rules were or what the tradition was. Let's try something new. And Jupiter knows there was wisdom in the traditions, and it will fight to keep those traditions or those patterns in place. So essentially Venus will take the side of, Venus is the guru of the Asuras, and the Asuras, oftentimes, if you read back into the mythology or the stories, the Asuras weren't half bad. Some of the Asuras were actually pretty decent. Some of them were downright horrible, but some of them were pretty decent. And the Devas were essentially careless. Okay, so I think so this is talking back to the legends of Bali, who was an Ashura king who tried to make sure everybody got what they want. And Jupiter's incarnation of Vishnu came down to Earth, and one story is it was to teach Bali humility. Another was to restore Indra as the king of the gods, because Indra had gotten careless. So it's really kind of a fascinating dichotomy if you look at it from different sides, if you look at it from different perspectives. So Jupiter will always prevail because tradition is stronger than temporary justice. But this seeking of justice or of prosperity for everybody, that's very much a Venusian thing. All right. So let's go over to, so that's the conflict we're seeing in the world right now. How that'll affect specific countries, we'll get down to that later on. But again, there's a lot of Mars, K2, Rahu energy in the chart, and Mercury is promoting those things. So again, it's careful. It's a good time to be careful, to be cautious, not to provoke too much, which is never. I've never seen people exercise self-control in these circumstances, but maybe there's always a first time, and we'll see if they can do it. But the next few months, definitely as Mars approaches Saturn, definitely challenging period. And but at least for this week, the next couple of weeks, we have some degree of optimism. Around mid-December, we see our friend Mercury turn retrograde. So I'll talk about that in the next broadcast. So let's go over here to the individual charts. Sorry that took so long. But again, I think you should expect to see more violence. There were earthquakes. Where were there? Off the coast, I want to say, of Indonesia. I saw this morning. So yeah, so I mean that's Sun Mars, that Saturn Sun Mars will cause things like that. K2 in Virgo will cause things like that. So let's go to the individual signs. I know I spent a lot of time on that, justifying myself, and I apologize for that, but I thought you should get a broader perspective of what was going on than just these people are bad and these people are good. Everybody basically thinks they're good. We have no objectivity about ourselves. All right, so let's go over here to Aries. Aries has Jupiter in the first house, retrograde. It's the ninth house lord. and the 12th house lord. So again, a lot of focus on expenditures for this chart. The good thing for this chart, though, is, and Rahu's in the 12th house, so it won't seem like you have enough money. It won't seem like, although relationship partners will be a little bit nicer and a little bit kinder this month, this sign's focus will be on relationships. Ketu's in the 6th house, have to be a little bit careful about illness. Moon is in the 4th, a lot of domestic tranquility, excuse me, and Mars is in the 8th, so this sign does have to be careful about being taken advantage of by its relationship partners. And Mercury's in the 9th, so good for communications. Saturn's in the 11th, good for gains, but slow gains, unfortunately. So that hasn't changed much for Jupiter since Rahu's gone into the 12th. As a matter of fact, it's really it's made domestic life a little more pleasant, but it's also given some problems in terms of more expenses because of over optimism. For Taurus, Taurus has Sun and Mars in the 7th house. Again, this is another Mars affliction combination. And Venus is in the 6th house. So this sign will be working hard on improving itself. It'll be working hard on its diplomatic skills. It'll encounter some problems or some discipline issues with children, or maybe some illnesses connected with children. Venus is in the 6th. It should watch out for its own health, I think. Sun and Mars are in the 7th house. Again, that's a Mars affliction combination, so there will be increased fights with spouse. Mercury's in the 8th house. This sign will seem very attractive to most people, very hiddenly seductive, if that's the right word. Rahu's in the 11th house. Be careful of friendships, and again, be careful of overspending. For Gemini, so I'm telling you this during the holiday season. God Almighty, what a time to be telling you this. Gemini is Lord, so this is June 16th to July 16th. Gemini's Lord is Mercury, is in the 7th house. A lot of focus on relationships, but sometimes this will give actually the end or the realization of the truth about relationships, but there'll be increased communication. Moon is in the 2nd house. Again, that makes this sign very attractive, very smart this month, this week. And Ketu's in the 4th. Some arguments at home, but Venus is in the 5th. The love relationship will still come through. The desire for personal happiness through romantic involvements is still very strong. And Sun and Mars are in the 6th. So again, watch out for overworking, watch out for overextending yourself. Saturn's in the 9th house, so good for gains, but again, very slow. Jupiter's in aspected by Saturn, and a lot of those gains probably won't come through until mid-December at the earliest, maybe even mid-January. Rahu's in the 10th, some fame is associated with this sign. For Cancer, Cancer has Moon in the 1st house, Ketu in the 3rd, so some bravery. Venus, it will want to maintain domestic happiness. Some problems with children show up again, although children will be very confident and very outgoing. Saturn shows up in the 8th house. That's really not a bad combination, although the relationship partner will be keeping hidden away or be tough to communicate with. Also, keep in mind when I'm doing these significations, if you're in a Mahadasha or a major planetary period, which is why it's good to have your chart done, you can be experiencing these transits as affecting your life right now, because this becomes almost a substitute rising sign when you're in a major planetary period of a specific planet. So Saturn's in the 8th house. It does indicate a letting go of bad behaviors, letting go of things that aren't working, and but that's also to release you to get more luck and more skill from 2025 onward. So you may have to release certain things that you had held on to for a long time. Jupiter's in the ninth house, very good for career life. I'm sorry, the 10th house, very good for career life with the sun. Leo. Leo has no planets in the first house, K2's in the second. So there will be this feeling of being tricked. You'll have to watch out for family members in terms of taking money from you. Venus is in the third. This sign will not want to make waves. It will expect its orders to be followed out without question. Sun and Mars are in the fourth house. So there'll be this is another Mars affliction combination. And relationship life will be a little bit tough this month. Rahu's in the eighth, so relationship partner may be spending or maybe expressing dissatisfaction a little bit more than normal. And Jupiter's in the ninth house, good for gain of knowledge, good for gain of success. Moon is in the 12th house, actually a good ability to save money. And this sign will have more opportunities for happiness in relationships with Moon in the 12th house. Virgo. Virgo has K2 in the first house. Now, this is fascinating because this changed. This is the first really full week I can actually talk about K2 in Virgo. And although if we use a mean nose, it was in there from November onwards. So K2, November 1st onwards. So K2 in Virgo kind of activates Mercury, so there'll be a lot of communications, a lot of focus on the home, but also a lot of confusion about goals and a lot of self-sacrifice for the sign. Venus in the second house, financial growth is anticipated. Sun and Mars in the third house, this sign will show a lot of bravery, abilities to overcome enemies, although relationship partners will seem to be very difficult or very difficult to please because of Rahu in the seventh. And again, there will be more interest in hidden knowledge and in astrology and topics like that. Moon is in the 11th house, good for gains this week. For Libra, Libra's finally got K2 out of the first house. That was detrimental for trade. It also delayed some of the recessionary trends, which we're seeing right now in England. And I think we'll see it in the United States because K2 is going into the 10th house in the United States chart. And Sun and Mars are in the 12th house. So that indicates more debt and more economic slowdown. Venus is still elevated, though, in the 11th house. So I think you'll actually see for this sign, increased optimism, increased self-confidence, increased desire to do what it wants to do. That'll become more strong next week. That'll become much stronger next week. Mars is in the second house. This is what's called a wealth-producing combination or a Dana Yoga. And so that should produce a lot of money for the sign. And Mercury's in the third house. So the sign will be very solicitous of other people, very careful not to hurt them. Saturn's in the fifth house. Good luck if you work hard. Good luck if you're willing to do things over. Saturn, Rahu's in the sixth house. Some concern or worry about illnesses, but it's a passing phenomenon. Jupiter in the seventh. A lot of relationship opportunities, but also a lot of fighting with relationship partners, oddly enough, overdoing the right thing, overdoing what you think is right or equitable. Moon is in the 10th house, very good for career for this sign, and very good for gains over the next week. For Scorpio, K2's in the 12th, a lot of focus on spiritual development for the sign too. Now, not virtual development, spiritual development. Spiritual development. God, I'm looking at the voice recognition software and I'm going, All right. All right. So let's, all right. Scorpio has Sun and Mars in the first house, Mars affliction combination again. Libra has that as well, by the way. So again, it's really not a good time to start relationships for Libra, and not a good time for Scorpio either. But Mars is in the second house. It's very strong. Mars is in the first house for Scorpio. It's a wealth producing planet. Mercury can give gains through relationship partners or through spouse, or through partnerships. Rahu is in the fifth house. Children will seem greedy or overly um, difficult to please. Jupiter's in the sixth house. Some problems with orthodox behavior or with people who are expecting you to act like everybody else. Moon is in the ninth house, which is generally not a bad placement. The moon is in its own sign, although it's what's called a Bodica planet for a Scorpio rising. So it will produce good luck with effort. Okay. So, and finally, we get to K2 in the 11th house. So again, Scorpios should not trust their friends. And Venus is in the 12th house, good opportunity for saving. Okay, for saving it. But also some possibly relationship partners will be distant or remote, or maybe even leave. It depends on other factors, obviously, in your chart. Sagittarius has Saturn in the third house, Jupiter in the fifth. That's a good combination for financial growth and luck. It is another Dana Yoga or wealth producing combination. Rahu's in the fourth house. So again, there's this feeling that you're not really quite getting what you want. I am seeing signs that inflation is lowering at the gas pump, so that's a good thing. But again, I think the overall rate of inflation having diminished doesn't reverse prices. That's the only problem you run into. So the cost of living is still very high, and it'll probably stay that way for, I would say, the better part of a year. Saturn aspects Jupiter, so again, still some supply chain problems. Saturn aspecting Sun in the 12th house, still a lot of expenses connected with this. With this rising sign, Moon is in the eighth house. That actually gives a lot of interest in looking behind the scenes, or looking through documents, or being careful when signing papers. K2 is in the 10th house, can give some lack of recognition in career. Venus is in the 11th, so good for financial gains, but again, it tends to be spent. Capricorn, we're getting towards the end. Capricorn is in Capricorn's Lord is in the second house, Jupiter aspecting Jupiter. So again, this gives a lot of burdens connected with home finances. Rahu's in the third, the sign will be very courageous. And Moon is in the seventh house, so good career recognition. K2's in the ninth, bosses will be difficult and critical, but again, career life will be going fairly well, and financial gains will be going fairly well. Communications will be with people from different countries or different cultures, and you have to be a little bit careful about, again, problems with bosses leading to losses. I didn't intend that rhyme. For Aquarius, we have Saturn in the first house, aspecting Jupiter, Rahu in the second house. So the sign still feels like it doesn't have enough money, but there's a potential for bringing in more because Venus is in the ninth house. And career life for this planet looks very, very good with Sun and Mars in the 10th house. And relationship partners will help out with career. Moon is in the sixth. It means a lot of work, a lot of going back and correcting things. And with that, Rahu in the second house and Jupiter in the third. Again, a lot of diplomatic skills, but again, a lot of what I would call disappointments or expectations of perfection. But there should be good financial gains for this sign. For Pisces, Pisces has, I'm checking the time just to make sure I don't run over. Pisces has Rahu in it. This is a disruptive element for Pisces because Pisces normally likes to detach or do mystical things, or it likes to escape. On the negative side, if it can increase things like overindulgence for this particular sign, overindulgence in any substances that you like to take, whether it be food or drink or anything. And relationship partners will be very critical and argumentative. However, money will come in. Good luck with children, good luck with career life, because the moon is connected with past life efforts, so you'll get some recognition for things you've done in the past. Good for unexpected financial gains, and Sun and Mars in the ninth house, good for overall improvement in life, although Saturn does slow that down just a little bit. Mercury's in the 10th, good for communications for this chart. So relationship life will not be that bad. Only relationship partners will be a little bit difficult to communicate with. So let's go on to the map. This was where I had problems in the last posting I made. Okay, so this popped up, and let me expand it a little bit. All right, so we're looking over towards Hawaii, and there's a Jupiter and a Venus line heading over towards Hawaii and Alaska. So Venus is hitting Alaska directly. Jupiter's hitting Hawaii, but it's out towards Kauai, not really towards the Big Island. But I'm still worried about flooding. I'm still worried about, not so much worried about fires, but flooding, and maybe even some danger of volcanic, of volcanic activity for this sign. Excuse me. Moon is really touching on nowhere out here. There's a Saturn line on the west coast of Canada, and between that you have a Sun and a Mars line hitting right through California. So this is actually hitting really close to San Francisco, or I'm sorry, up near, San Francisco is more like here, sort of like in between LA and San Francisco, and going up through Nevada and up through Idaho and up into Montana. And I think when you see lines like that, and the Mars line really close by, the Sun and the Mars line really close by, and even into Nebraska, right? I think whenever you see combinations like that, you're expecting some kind of rivalry or animosity in that part of the world. The Mars line is closer to Arizona than I had yesterday, and that should mean there'll be political fights in all these states right around here, and even into central Canada. There's a Mercury line heading up through Texas, Louisiana, and there's this Rahu line heading up through roughly around Michigan, close to Wisconsin, and really kind of screwing it down here by Nebraska, down by Arkansas and Missouri, and down into Louisiana. So that part we'd expect some kind of political scandal around. or political disruption or some kind of scandal. There's a Venus line over here and a Mercury line over here. So you're going to hear a lot about essentially about Canada and also about the Great Lakes states over here, down through Ohio and even into Pennsylvania. And again, some danger of flooding because Venus does give flooding, some danger of really serious precipitation in this part of the world. We have a Jupiter line running straight through Washington, D.C. This indicates there's going to be a lot of judicial action in Washington, D.C. and Virginia, even in Cuba and down into South America. And you can have some flooding near Panama and Nicaragua too. Excuse me. And also, you have all these lines running down through here. This Jupiter line running down through here, where you'll see some attempts to suppress populist thought or popular ideas down through Peru and into Ecuador and even into Argentina. Argentina just elected a new president, I believe it was, and Argentina has this long moon line running close to it or running through it, and also this, what is that line? Okay, so we have a Saturn moon line running through Brazil and Argentina. Not good for the economies, not good for the economy of Uruguay and Paraguay. So a lot of these countries down here are going to be hurting financially. Let's see now. Strict government control. So in Brazil, it looks like to me. Mercury's running through Iceland. So some disruption in Iceland, at least in terms of the government. We can still see these Rahu lines running through Portugal, running through Morocco, into Libya, down towards Ghana and Mali, and all the way down. So you have these Venus, Jupiter, Rahu lines running down. So this is going to give a lot of social protest, that combination of planets in that part of the world. So roughly we're looking at in between Ireland and England and all the way into Germany, even Denmark, and even all the way over to Greece and Turkey. There's some potential for violent protests. Sun and Mars, there's a moon line running close to or through Israel, and the Mars line running in conjunction. So again, it's not surprising hostilities have started up again. Just hoping they can reach an agreement soon. This is really ridiculous. So I'm just speaking as an observer. As an observer, this is really ridiculous. And you have Egypt maybe being pulled in a little bit. They're definitely involved. Turkey may be tempted to be pulled in a little bit, but I think they'll stay out of it. Russia will definitely stay out of it. I don't see Russia. Russia is still trying to resolve and consolidate its land claims in Ukraine, and I don't think they have time for that kind of stuff right now. Mercury is running through Iran, so we're going to hear a lot more about Iran. We're going to hear a lot more about, quote unquote, the destruction of Iran, which really kind of ticks me off because I'm really not looking for somebody who is eager to start another war. Rahu is passing through. So yesterday I had Saturn passing through India. This time I have Rahu on the Bengali coast of India and over Ladakh and Bangladesh. And I think this indicates economic slowdown for India to a certain extent, and for China as well. And for there's a Venus line, so there could be flooding in Cambodia, Myanmar, and there's a Jupiter line, more flooding in Vietnam, Indonesia. Remember I said earthquakes over here in this part of the world, so we have to be careful about that. And I think the Philippines were also mentioned. I can't remember exactly. And there's a moon line going through the Philippines and through Australia. Australia has adopted some more draconian measures in terms of its reaction to the pandemic, and so that's what I've heard. I haven't followed it all that closely, and so we have Saturn aspecting Sun and Mars. So essentially, Australia is going to be more or less in the news. So will Japan, so will China, but China essentially will be China, trying to think of a way to express this delicately. China will have been found to have been engaging in some illegal or immoral activities in order to increase its money supply. That's just the moon and Ketu talking. And we have another Rahu line going through New Zealand. So again, Australia and New Zealand don't look to be in very good shape. Rahu passing over New Zealand indicates government scandals, I think. All right, so that's it for this week. Everybody, please subscribe, like, comment, and we're up to around 750 people, which is terrific. I want to do a lot more, and I look forward to seeing you every week. I hope you're all well. Stay optimistic. Every problem presents an opportunity. Okay, so be well. Thank you very much for watching. I love you all, and peace.